Mr. Branson, as a supervisory authority, the FINMA has the role to ensure that regulatory framework makes technological advancement possible. What does this mean in the context of blockchains, ICOs, big data and cyber fraud?
Yeah, what we've done in the world of ICOs is a few weeks ago published guidance how one can conduct an ICO absolutely in accordance with Swiss law, and that gives a chance for the serious innovators in this field to develop their activities, knowing how we view them. In the blockchain world, with its anonymity, obviously there is a certain risk of being attractive for money laundering and money launderers, and I think it's this risk that we put the most weight on in this world, and I think that's very important to know that in Switzerland the exchange of fiat money into tokens and the exchange between tokens has always been regulated under the money laundering laws and regulations, and that's also just as applicable for ICOs. What we don't want is for this nascent and interesting ICO world to be tainted from the beginning with this potential for money laundering risk.
But in a short space of time, ICOs have become a powerful money magnet, raising billions of dollars worldwide. But ICOs are often not transparent. Which guidelines are key for the FINMA?
Yeah, the guidelines that we issued, I think, should really help those with a serious project who have something definitive to explain to their investors, to do that in a way that's fully in accordance with Swiss law, because investors in ICOs should be just as well protected as investors who go through the traditional channels.
Let's now talk about Raiffeisen. What is the latest stand of the process?
We have a process running against the bank, and there's nothing new to say on that front, but we hope to be done in a matter of months, and then we can say more.
Don't you think that the FINMA reacted late after numerous discussions and indications in previous years?
Absolutely not. I think the concrete indications we had that something wasn't right came in 2016, and in 2016 we began with our work. Why does it take so long? Because here we're talking about detailed, partly intransparent transactions which needed really a forensic investigation to understand the full picture. And then we're nearly there where we need to be.
What consequences for Perrine Vincennes do you expect?
That's not something for me to say.
You said that other countries with important financial centers do more against, for instance, cyber attacks to protect the system as a whole. What should Switzerland do precisely?
I think one good example is penetration testing. Everybody understands how important penetration testing as a kind of mock exercise is. And in Switzerland, the institutions do that for themselves, but there's no concept for system-wide penetration testing when one makes a stress test for the system as a whole. And it's exactly this systemic dimension where you have really potentially issues of national security, not just issues of theft in play, which the institutions themselves can't have the full picture. And I think their system-wide cooperation is where other countries do more. For example, the biggest financial centers in the world, in London and in the USA, they have bundled their competencies more than we have until now in Switzerland.
And where do you see the biggest risk for cyber attacks on banks?
I think there's obviously the classic risk of theft. There've always been bank robberies. Now they take place not so much in the branch, but in the cyber world. That's the classic risk. There's then the more disruptive risk of denial of service and perhaps system-wide risks. And there's also the growing attractiveness of data theft, because data can be monetized once stolen. And so it's not just banks who are vulnerable, but it's everybody who has large collections of data. And there we can think, for example, of insurance companies.
But why is the financial system so vulnerable when it comes to cyber attacks? What do you think?
Because it's so digitalized.
And if you look at capitalization, are Swiss banks on track?
Yes.
More precisely?
Yeah, the capital in the system is been hugely improved for the largest institutions since the financial crisis. They have much more capital, better quality capital, and the standards we have in Switzerland are tough. They're among the leading standards, and the banks have already fulfilled most of them.
Where are you in separating regulation intensity, but smaller banks want to have less regulation?
We're looking right now at what we can do to relieve the complexity for the smallest and conservatively run organizations, because exactly in this phase after the crisis, not only did we change the calibration of the regulation, but the complexity grew, and that's fine for the largest institutions. They can absorb that, but for the smaller institutions, that's a challenge, and that's a challenge we understand, and we want to see what we can do with a kind of special regime for small banks which are conservatively run.
So this is one of your targets for 2018, or what?
That's correct. This regime will be piloted in 2018.